Hello and welcome to Africa Live, CCTV's new program that brings you African and global news from all perspectives. I'm Jiitu Abraham, and here's what else we have coming up. The global price of corn takes a beating as production reached record levels. Kenyan runners sweep top spots in the 89th São Silvestre race in Brazil. Let's start in South Sudan, where negotiators of both President Salva Kiir and former Vice President Riek Machar have arrived in Ethiopia's capital of Addis Ababa, and both are said to be ready to begin talks. The AU, IGAD, and the Ethiopian government are expected to jointly mediate these talks. Our CCTV correspondent, Gurum Challa, has more.
Both delegations are now in Addis Ababa. President Salva Kiir sent a delegation of 14 of his men under the leadership of South Sudan's information minister. The former vice president, Riek Machar, sent his lawyers, including Rebecca Garang, widow of SPLM founder John Garang. On a recent development, the government in Juba has declared a state of emergency in the rebel-held regions amid this highly awaited peace talk. The dialogue between the two sides will start on Thursday under the mediation of the Ethiopian government and the members of the African Union High-Level Implementation Panel, AUHIP, as well as IGAD. The expectation from the Addis Ababa negotiations first and foremost is halting violence, which claimed more than 1,000 lives in South Sudan, and later paving the way for President Kiir and Dr. Machar to meet face-to-face to resolve the differences once and for all. But the process is not going to be walking in the park. Grumjala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
All right, staying in South Sudan, the country's President Salva Kiir has declared a state of emergency in two states of unity in Jonglei. These states include the rebel-held towns of Bor and Bentiu, and this comes as Kiir's negotiators prepare for talks with rebels in hopes of ending the violence seen in the last few weeks.
The decree issued on Wednesday covers Unity and Jonglei states. These two regions are controlled by rebel forces loyal to former Vice President Riek Machar. Gunshots were heard near the presidential palace on Wednesday evening. A presidential spokesman said security forces most likely fired the shots at residents, breaking a curfew. Both sides are under mounting pressure from regional and Western powers to reach a peace deal. The United States has said it would deny support to any group that seizes power by force. Neither side has indicated when the fighting would stop. Mediators are concerned that the fighting around the flashpoint town of Bor will affect the talks even before they begin. South Sudan's defense minister earlier said government forces were battling rebel fighters south of Bor. The United Nations mission in South Sudan said ethnic-based atrocities had taken place across the country. Carol Oyola, CCTV.
For more on this crisis in South Sudan, we're joined by our reporter in Juba, Kofa Marenje. Kofa, what's the latest situation on the ground after the government's declaration of a state of emergency in these two states?
Well, a bit of anxiety here in Juba and around South Sudan. We understand that the government has sent about 10,000 soldiers to the town of Bor, and they have clear instructions to take.
Kofa, are you still with us? We have another question for you. All right, he is there, Kofa. The humanitarian situation appears to be worsening. How are aid agencies addressing this issue? All right, sounds like we're having some technical difficulties. We'll see if we can get back with him later in the show. Looking now at South Sudan's most vulnerable citizens, its children. Many of those children who managed to escape the violent conflicts are now fighting a different battle, a battle against disease. Arwa Damon now reports from the UN camp in Juba.
3-month-old Ron has diarrhea, a fever, and cough. His mother, Elizabeth, is just 15 years old. married at 13 after her mother passed away. He wasn't sick like this at home, she tells us. I'm worried he will not be all right.
My baby is very brave.
Her concern is justified. Most of the cases arriving at this mobile clinic, set up by Doctors Without Borders at a UN compound in Juba, are severe diarrhea.
Diarrhea can kill a child really fast if the dehydration is very severe and we cannot treat it straight away. Yes, it's quite dangerous. It's one of the first killers in the world. And it's the same for malaria also.
Tents and sheets provide some shelter from the sweltering sun for those too ill to move. Adults lie listless, waiting to see the doctors. The vast majority of them also have severe diarrhea. Conditions out here are abysmal, although better than when the refugees first streamed in. Clean water is in short supply, despite the tanker loads being brought in, hardly enough for drinking, bathing, and washing.
Down there are some of the latrines that have been set up by UNICEF, but despite aid agencies' best efforts, these are hardly sanitary conditions. And this is just one of the factors that is contributing to growing concerns about the spread of various diseases.
The population density at this UN camp is said to be equivalent to 10 times that of Mumbai, one of the world's most crowded cities. Such cramped conditions create the potential for even greater suffering.
If we get any one of those contagious or disease outbreak, that will be a big issue because we are maybe not really ready to respond for the meantime, like cholera, like measles.
Immunizations are underway for polio and measles, but of even greater concern are the children who didn't make it to UN bases, don't have access to treatment, and have reportedly fled into the bush without access to water, food, and medicine, potentially leading to more innocent lives lost, to a war few can understand. Arwa Damon, Juba.
All right, for more analysis on this crisis in South Sudan, we're joined once again with our reporter from Juba, Kofa Marenja. Kofa, thank you for joining us. Kofa, can you tell us what the situation on the ground is like after the government's declaration of a state of emergency in the two states?
Well, like I was saying before, we are told that the government has sent about 10,000 soldiers to the town of Bor, which is in Jonglei State, one of the states where a state of emergency has been declared. They have clear instructions to take defensive positions just outside the town and have ordered the young men who have taken control of that town to move out peacefully. Remember, these are young men who have no military training, and therefore the government is trying to tread carefully. They have ordered them to move out and been ordered that they should not try to attack the soldiers. However, if they do so, then the government and the soldiers will not have any option other than to take them down.
Kofa, the humanitarian situation appears to be worsening. How are aid agencies addressing this issue?
Well, aid organizations are stretched at the moment. The numbers in camps are growing by the day. They are running out of supplies. The UN, for example, has asked the donors and the international community to come up and donate so that they can contain the situation here. The head of the UN mission here in Juba said they are stretched. They cannot cope with the situation and the growing numbers, and therefore they are asking for the international community and donors to come in and help them contain the situation.
All right, thank you for that update. That's Kofa Marenja live for us in Juba. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom has given about £12 million, or $20 million, to aid refugees in South Sudan. The funds will pay for emergency medical treatment, for provisions for clean water, and for tents for people fleeing the violence. So far, it's estimated that at least 180,000 people have been forced from their homes. About half of the funds will go to the Rapid Response Facility, which channels money to pre-approved aid organizations and firms that provide the necessary medical, water, and sanitation services. All right, it's time for us to take a short break, but here's what we have when we come back. Mogadishu explosions, 11 people perish after popular hotel is targeted again. Elimination target, Rwandan former spy dies in a South African hotel.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need to trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Let's turn to the Horn of Africa region, specifically Somalia, where 11 people were killed when 3 bombs exploded within an hour outside a hotel in the capital city of Mogadishu on Wednesday. The Jazeera Hotel, known to be frequented by government officials, is supposed to be one of the most secure places in Mogadishu. The first 2 bombs came in quick succession and were followed by heavy bursts of gunfire by Somali security forces. The third blast happened about an hour later when the bomb went off inside a car that was being searched by military officers. Police say that at least one of the first 2 blasts appeared to have been set off by a suicide bomber. There were no immediate claims of responsibility. At least 10 people have been injured in the early morning attack in another suspected terror incident. 10 people have been wounded in the grenade attack at a Kenyan tourist resort south of the port city of Mombasa. Attackers hurled the device into a tandoori bar in the town of Diani in the early hours of Thursday. Police said the injured were taken to the hospital and are in stable condition. Kenya's coast is a popular destination for tourists, but has been plagued by attacks blamed on Islamist militants. No one has yet claimed responsibility for these attacks. A former head of the Rwanda External Intelligence Service has been found murdered in a hotel in South Africa, the country where he has been living in exile for several years. Police said on Thursday that Patrick Karachige's body was found on Wednesday around 5:30 p.m. It was found in a Johannesburg hotel with his neck swollen. In a statement, Lieutenant Colonel said the bloodied towel and rope were found inside the hotel room safe. Fresh inter-religious clashes in the Central African Republic's capital have killed at least 3 people. Angry residents threw grenades and torched selected homes on Wednesday. French and African troops deployed to the country have struggled to stop the retaliatory violence between the Muslim Seleka rebels and Christian self-defense militias. Susan Mwangi reports.
Some Bangui residents said Seleka forces wearing civilian clothes threw grenades at Christian households, setting them ablaze. Christian youths then launched reprisal attacks on nearby Muslim houses and banned them.
Musulmans sont venus, ils ont brûlé beaucoup de maisons.
Overnight, the Muslims came and set fire to the houses. Everyone was affected and everyone left without anything. This morning, they began shooting, and when we heard that, we quickly left for the larger camps where there are many people.
A doctor at medical charity Doctors Without Borders at a makeshift airport camp housing over 100,000 displaced people said it had received 15 injured and 2 dead.
Among the dead was an adolescent of 12 years with a gash on his skull.
It was not clear if those killed were the Muslims from the northern district. The previous day, a 4-month-old baby died from a gunshot wound. Aid workers say they're struggling to provide for the country's more than 800,000 displaced people, most of whom are now living in crowded camps because ongoing violence is disrupting supplies. Others have fled via boats across the Congo River or on emergency flights to nearby countries. Susan Mongeli, CCTV.
The UK has pledged almost $20 million in aid to help those in the South Sudan conflict. And for more analysis on this, we're joined by our correspondent in London, Richard Bestick. Richard, thank you for joining us. Richard, what's the UK's position on fighting in South Sudan, and is there a common position being fronted by the European Union?
Well, London sees the Sudan conflict on two levels. There's both a political and military disaster, but also as a humanitarian crisis in the making. It's a view in line with the European Union, which has sent an envoy to help seek a political solution and has at the same time made a $4 million contribution to the UN's World Food Programme to help the areas of most need, those displaced by the fighting. Clearly, though, with some nearly 1/3 of a million people needing help, the international community will be called on again for further aid. One estimate from the UN Assistant Secretary Tony Lanza was that the country needs more than $1 billion in aid. The struggle as it stands further complicated by the need to maintain the safety of both aid workers and recipients as the aid is delivered.
All right, thank you for that. That's Richard Bestick live for us in London with more on that.